In 1993, Vishy and Anand played two of the deepest moves chess has ever seen. In this video, we're going to review the fantastic Vishy and Anand vs. Lautier game, which is a game that was recommended by a subscriber. Thanks for the recommendation. This was a truly amazing game. I'll pause the video to give you a chance to spot Anand's two amazing moves. This game was played in a tournament in Switzerland when Anand was just 24 years old. Anand had the white pieces and he started us off with e4. After d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, we've got the basic Scandinavian defense on the board here. Knight c3 from white, and there's a couple options for black. Black can bring the queen all the way back to d8. Obviously the queen comes to d6, but the most common move and the move that Lautier played in this game was queen a5. And what do you do as white here? You just continue controlling the center and developing your pieces. So after d4, knight f6 from Lautier, get knight f3 from Vishy, all very standard moves here. And here, our key move in the Scandinavian for black, c6. The whole point of playing c6 is to give the queen kind of an escape route in case there's any funny business here on the queen side with white maybe pushing some pawns to pressure the queen. White continues with their development, bishop c4, and after bishop f5 from black, Vishy keys in on this weak f7 square by playing this move, knight e5. With the knight and e5, the bishop and the knight both keying in on that weak f7 square. Such a weak square in the opening. The only thing black can do to defend is play e6. And now that the knight is on this e5 square, it's got tentacles into the black position, but it also covers this really important g4 square and allows white to play g4 with a tempo on the bishop. Bishop's got to come back, so after bishop g6, we get h4, another theme in the Scandinavian, and sometimes you see this also in the Caro-Kann, but just putting pressure on this light square bishop for black. Knight bd7 from black, and now Vishy had to make a decision. There's two attackers on this. Knight on e5. There's only one defender. If Vishy were to play a move like this, for instance, you'd get takes, takes. The queen would take with check, and after the bishop blocks, this light square bishop would be able to move to safety. So Vishy's got to get his knight out of the center, and he does exactly that by playing knight takes d7. And after knight takes d7, we've got h5. Again, putting pressure on that light square bishop. Only one square for the light square bishop, and that is e4, obviously attacking this rook. And so what do you do here as white? There's a couple different options. Obviously, this rook has to move, because if you don't move the rook, you lose it. So let's explore some of these options for white. You could castle kingside. But the problem with castling kingside is that this bishop gets this really nice outpost on d5. And after knight takes d5, c takes d5, maybe bishop d3, bishop d6 from black, white's really extended here on their kingside. They've got this really nice dark square bishop cutting, black has this really nice dark square bishop cutting right into white's kingside. The queen's going to have a very easy time kind of relaying around the board to put pressure on the king. Not a position that you really want to be in as white. So castling's kind of off the board. Another move you could play is rook g1. The problem with rook g1 is you get bishop d5 again, and it's kind of the same position, but now you don't even have the option of castling because you've ruined your ability to castle. So if we go back to this position, you could play f3, but the problem with f3 is, again, the bishop comes back to d5, and after bishop d3, now black can play e5, and the center's about to get blown open. Black's going to castle queenside and put their rook on this really nice e-file, and white's going to be in a little bit of trouble. And so Vishy had a really creative move in this position, and I think it's a very beautiful move, and he played rook h3. And a nice little rook lift, get the rook kind of on top of the bishop, with ideas of bringing the rook over to the center, which is a great place for the rook. Here, Lautier played bishop g2, and we get rook e3. So now we see kind of the idea of the rook lift getting all the way over. And here, Lautier figured that he might centralize his knight, which he realized he could do with tempo. So after a move like knight b6, putting pressure on the bishop, but remember, grandmasters don't really want to exchange bishops for knights, and so the bishop came back to d3, and now this knight got this really nice outpost on d5. This knight is pinned to the king, but also putting pressure on this rook. In here, another great move from Vishy. What do you do in this position? The rook can't really come up because the bishop will attack it, and you kind of be back in the same position you were. The rook obviously can't come back because then you get skewered. That's no fun. And you don't really want to bring the rook over to g3 because then you're going to get knight takes c3, and after taking back, the bishop's going to be able to come right back out to this nice d5 square, and you got two pieces keying in here. This piece is actually super weak, so not a great position for white. And so Vishy found the best move in this position, and it is the really awesome f3. The idea being that this black bishop is now going to be trapped behind these pawns, and so let's say we got knight takes e3. After bishop takes e3, you know, we might get bishop b4 kind of piling up on this this right here. We get king f2, and after bishop h3, queen h1. And so this queen's going to pick off this bishop. And so even after takes, white can play a move like rook g1. And now no matter what happens here, this bishop's going to fall. All of white's pieces are protected, and white's just going to be up a full piece. So a big problem for black. And so Lautier, realizing this, decides not to take this rook, realizing that just would not work for him. And instead he decides to kind of pile up on this pinned knight, and so he plays the move bishop b4. We get king f2 from Anand, just going after that bishop, and after bishop takes c3, b takes c3, queen takes c3, white has to make a decision about what to do with this rook and decides to get it on the open file. Always a good decision, especially when you've got this really weak b7 pawn. We get queen takes d4 from black. So you see here black really piling up on this rook that's pinned to the king. There's two attackers on this rook, but white also has two defenders, both the bishop and the king. But it's important to know that if the white king were to step away to capture this bishop, then the rook would fall. So as of right now, this bishop is not liable to be taken. Here Anand played the great move rook takes b7. You always want to get your rooks on the 7th rank, such a theme in chess. And here we get rook d8 from Lautier, just piling up on this d file, adding pressure behind the queen. Clear that this knight's going to move, and this queen and rook combo is going to really wield a lot of power on this d file. And it was in this position, on move 20, that Vichy played one of just the deepest moves I think chess has ever seen. I don't even know how you'd find this move, but go ahead and pause the video and try and find the move that Vichy played next. So if you found the move, congratulations. The move is the fantastic h6, and it's difficult to get into what exactly this move does without showing the next move, which I don't want to spoil for you. So I'll just show you what Lautier did in this game. Lautier played g takes h6, and now go ahead and pause the video one last time and try and find the next move that makes that h6 sequence work. Okay, if you found the move, I mean, incredible, congratulations. I could not find it. The move is the incredible bishop g6. I mean, this is a fantastic move, offering the queen, and let's go through kind of what the threat is here. So obviously the queen is under attack for white, so if black captures this queen, what's the compensation they get? Obviously, this pawn is pinned to the king, and so after check, the king would come over, and after bishop check, the king would come over, and that would be checkmate. So a nice little checkmate right there. In this position, after the rook captures the pawn, you could block check with the knight, but after captures king over, you basically get the same checkmate. You just given up the knight, so it's not going to work. So we know that the queen taking queen results in checkmate. If we go back though, let me explain this h6 move. So this h6 move is just a brilliant move, setting this up. And obviously we just showed how if black captures the pawn, this bishop g6 move, it can be really crushing and it's threatening checkmate. So what about if black simply played g6 right away? Well, this still loses to the same move. After bishop takes g6, the key difference here is that this pawn now covers this g7 square. And so if we get queen takes here, we get the same sequence of moves, check, the king comes over, check, king comes over, and now because this pawn covers this g7 square, we can check with the rook. And after the king comes here, now we've got a bunch of bishop checks. Check, check, checkmate. So another really interesting checkmate. So either way you slice it, if we just go all the way back here, after this h6 move, if you take with the pawn or if you push the pawn, white has bishop g6, a really fantastic move. So it begs the question then, what if black didn't take the pawn? What if black played a move like knight f4, for instance? Well, the problem though is after h takes g7, rook g8, the rook has to come off that h8 square, otherwise they're going to lose rook and white's going to queen. So after rook g8, white has this really fantastic bishop b2, and the rook is covering the bishop is protecting the pawn, and after something like queen c5, you can get bishop e5. White has really nicely set up their bishops. They really have there's no threats. This knight has got to move to some square because it's under attack, and after the knight moves, the bishop will fall. So just absolutely winning for white. So h6, I mean, just an incredible move. Lautier obviously captured, and after bishop g6, another incredible move, just icing on the cake here. Lautier realized that he could not capture this queen, that it would be poisoned to do that, and so what he decided to do is play knight e7. What this does is it opens up this defender on the queen, and so now the queen is not under attack. And then continue with queen takes d4, and after rook takes d4, go ahead and pause the video one last time and find the winning move for Viswanathan. So in this position, Vichy played rook d3. And what this does is just a great move. You really have to capture here as black, and then the bishop can come out of the stack square. And now if we just look at this position right here, white's bishop is safe, this bishop is safe, this rook is safe. White is threatening things like rook b8 to win the h8 rook, and this bishop's about to fall. So really a great move for white to play that rook d3 move. If you think about the other options for black in this position, black could play something, I don't know, like rook a4 maybe if they didn't want to give up the rook. The problem though is after rook b8 check, knight c8, rook takes c8, you know, king moves up, you just lose the rook. And I mean, you play this out, and this is just totally crushing for white. White's up a rook and a piece, just absolutely winning. So not wanting to give the rook up right away after rook d3, black played rook d8. The problem though is rook takes d8 with check, and after king takes d8, we get bishop d3, white moving their bishop to safety. And it was in this position on move 25 that Lautier resigned the game. So really an incredible game. I think it's amazing the two moves that Vichy found, the h6 and the bishop g6 combination. I mean, truly one of the great combinations in chess. And this bishop was kind of the sticking point for black the entire game. Never lost the bishop, but the threat of losing this bishop is really what affected all the other moves that black made. So thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for subscribing to this channel, for liking these videos. I think we've just reached over 500 subscribers, so I'm overwhelmed by the support. And thank you for recommending this game, an incredible game, a game I actually hadn't seen before this video. So I really appreciate your recommendations and the support that we kind of have in this community. So thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week.